Today we're going to talk about limited brands and the problems they ran into with their supply chain management in 2002. A brief background on Limited Brands Incorporated. It is made up of 7 retail brands, which are listed below, which are divided among 3,500 stores across the country. Fortune magazine in 2002 said that Limited Brands was the world's most admired companies. However, behind the scenes, operations were not always running so smoothly. Specifically, problems with the enterprise's supply chain that year led to their senior vice president of supply transformation, Paul Matthews, called a pretty significant catastrophe in Limited Brands. The first question we are asked is, analyze limited brands using the competitive forces and value chain models. How is supply chain management related to the company's business strategy? To answer this question, we must first look at the definition of supply chain management, which is integration of supplier, distributor, and customer logistics requirements into one cohesive process. The supply chain management is related to company's business strategy because the company Limited Brands did not have a supply management system in progress to allow the merger of these 7 brands to come together. Next question we are asked is to describe the supply chain management problems encountered by Limited Brands in this case. What was their business impact? The problems faced by Limited Brands were their planning systems failed, they had no business strategy, no central location, management problems, inventory problems, no central distribution center, and no set information technology infrastructure, which we will get into later. The impacts of this idle business was that it left the business Limited Brands extremely disorganized. The employees were taking too long to solve simple problems, and the employees were more concerned with the supply chain when they should have been focusing more on their sales of the product. Today we're going to talk about Limited Brands and the problems they ran into with their supply chain management in 2002. The problem with the management problems were there was no centralized management office where each company could come to with its problems and to solve these problems. So what you had was 7 different brands all having their own management systems trying to merge together into one different system which no one was trying to create. The problem with the organization was there was no headquarters for their deliveries, and this is one of the biggest problems. At one point, at a distributor, they had 400 merchandise trailers at one distribution center, and this distribution center was only made to hold 150 trailers. This caused a main highway to be clogged, and this happened at the beginning of the sales period in 2002, which really hurt their sales in the beginning of the year. And moving on to the technology problems, this is where they really had a lot of problems. They had no set information technology infrastructure. Each of these brands was running on its own system. With each of these 7 brands running on its own system, it created 60 major systems running within 100 different applications on a variety of different platforms. Some of these servers included IBM, Hewlett-Packard, Sun, Microsoft Systems, and a bunch of other servers that are not as big of names. So how did Limited Brands solve these problems? What management, organization, and technology issues were addressed by the solution? That's the one question that we need to answer. The solution to this problem was a 2-part solution. The first part involved Limited Logistics Services, also known as LLS, part of the Limited Company. Limited Logistics Services was the supplier of global logistics management and leadership for supply chains. The problem at first with LLS was when they tried to integrate, was each brand gave resistance to these integration strategies. So it was up to Rick Johnson, the executive vice president of LLS, to solve this problem. He won the brands over by showing them one by one how supply chain transformation would produce significant savings and strategic benefit for each of the brands. He also developed a customer service agreement and metrics for evaluating results for each of these brands. And the second part of this was Limited Brands hired Tobacco, which was a leading vendor of enterprise application integration software. They were contracted to develop a global application integration platform for Limited Brands. This platform's purpose was to improve the company's ability to track and manage the flow of information through its worldwide supply chain. This would help with the problem that we learned about earlier when they had 400 trucks in a truck stop that was only meant for 150 trucks. I hope you enjoyed this presentation today on Limited Brands and how its supply chain management in change in 2002 dramatically improved their company. And I hope you enjoy this presentation, and I hope to see you next time.